Hey, it's time for church. It's time to get to where it's got to go, which is 1714 West 7th Street in Ybor City, the place where it all began. We are about to jump into the rotation. Hit the music. Oh, I love that music.
Isn't it great? I never get tired of it.
I got tired of it a long time ago, but I still like it.
I love to smoke marijuana.
Okay.
Oh, Lord.
Here we are. Okay. I am Gary Stein, the political director of Suncoast Normal here in Florida and the master of public health. Next to me is my deputy director and co-host and engineer, Carlos Ermida, our master of business administration. And
MBA does not qualify me to be the engineer of a radio show. Just saying.
Not at all. It's not a licensing thing at all.
Whatever this is.
And above the Beltway, so close you can smell the fumes coming from the Capitol building, we have Chris Cano, our executive director and our master of public administration. And we are the masters of cannabis here on the rotation. And we have a very special guest in the Secret Square today, Mr. Richard DeLisi, who we are going to be introducing in just a moment. But first, let's get the news out of the way. Chris, what is going on in D.C. right now?
Well, there's a lot going on up here in D.C. in our nation's capital, and a lot going on around the entire country. One thing I do want to report is that just now in 2021, the last 2 months, state licensed cannabis industry jobs have increased by 100,000. And now the legal cannabis industry has employed close to 500,000 workers in this country. So if we're looking at essential industries that you want to be a part of, getting into the legal cannabis industry seems to be one of those essential industries that is thriving. Now, in regards to some other updates around the country, Delaware, Maryland, and South Dakota are all advancing legislative efforts to see adult use. And it looks like up in Maryland, they're going to push it through to allow the voters to vote in November to legalize adult use. We're also seeing the same thing in Delaware. And of course, we know South Dakota has been going back and forth after its people passed one last November, and then the governor got involved and tried to get it overturned from the courts. So all in all, the South Dakotans are still fighting to advance and push for adult use and retail cannabis. And then New York is doing something interesting. Their governor recently signed legislation expediting the adult use of cannabis production and manufacturing by giving temporary licenses to hemp farmers who've had a hemp license in good standing for at least 2 out of the last 4 years. So that I find interesting.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that I find interesting for Florida because, we have a vertically integrated system here in Florida, and we have, 22 dispensaries. Only 18 of them actually have plants in the ground and are actually operating. And then you have over 7,000 hemp licenses issued through our Department of Agriculture. So if you ever wanted to break the back on the vertical integration in this state, if you ever wanted to get high quality cannabis grown, give our hemp farmers a chance, much like they're doing in New York. And I think this is a big issue that whoever's running for governor and any legislative office should start to take up here in Florida, unless, of course, you're getting checks to support that corporate booth that's hitting the market.
Well, the question is, can hemp farmers who normally grow outdoors, like their row crops, do the same kind of quality of an indoor grow here in Florida without having to worry about all the other issues that come with growing medical cannabis?
Well, I think the better question is, are the MMTCs growing up to par medicine for the patients? And the answer is we've seen recalls, we've seen mold, we've seen pests. There's concerns about what pesticides. There's concerns about how they treat the laborers who are actually growing it. So the fact is that could it be any worse than what we're already getting?
I've employed people that worked in dispensary grows. I'm not going to disclose which one. But the horror stories that they've told me, like, it's insane, dude. Like, I just, yeah.
Well, one of the other things that at the federal level is important, and we've talked about it for a few times, but I think it's important for folks to support is bipartisan legislation from Dave Joyce out of Ohio and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from New York. They've introduced legislation known as the HOPE Act, the Harnessing Opportunities by Pursuing Expungement Act, which will incentivize state and local governments to expunge the criminal records of tens of millions of Americans who have been convicted of marijuana offenses. This will appropriate $20 million to the U.S. Attorney General for the purpose of financially assisting state and local governments with the process of reviewing and expunging cannabis convictions.
Now, how many states have already started expungement processes for simple possession?
Well, we saw, it's been a year now. New Jersey's implemented it. Most of these states that are going adult use are instituting some type of expungement, but not all of them. And, since 2010, state and local police have arrested an estimated 7.3 million Americans for violating marijuana laws. So just in the last 12 years, 7.3 million Americans. Those are people who
shaking his head.
who are being pulled out of the workforce or being saddled with a criminal record, who could possibly be denied financial aid for their education. Passage of this bill providing this assistance to states, is wisely choosing to remove the stigma behind these records, and there is no justification for continuing to prevent tens of millions of Americans from fully participating in their communities and their workforce simply because they bear the burden of a past marijuana conviction.
And if anybody tries to expunge it themselves, you got to have a couple $1,000s in your back pocket, which is something you don't normally have after you've been deprived of a working job that pays more than 55 cents a day or whatever it is they are currently paying in the prisons right now as far as wages are concerned.
Yeah. Well, and one last final piece of news, outside of, the war between Russia and Ukraine, which is sucking up all the airwaves right now, the new Supreme Court justice that has been nominated by President Biden, after a thorough and rigorous process with input from senators of both parties, legal experts, President Biden has chosen Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. She has a proven track record of bipartisan support. She's been confirmed 3 times on bipartisan votes, serving as on the U.S. Sentencing Commission, serving as a judge on the district court and the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. If she is confirmed, she will be the first African-American female, the first Black woman to sit on the Supreme Court, but she'll also be the first public defender to ever serve on the Supreme Court. And Judge Jackson has a personal history of working as a public defender. While she was at Harvard, she actually had a relative, an uncle of hers, that was sentenced to life in prison for a nonviolent drug offense. And she helped convince a law firm to take his case pro bono, eventually leading President Obama to commute his sentence. So I think that it's important that we have her perspective on the Supreme Court, especially as we move forward. And I'm sure that, with today's guest, Richard would be pleased to hear that we have someone on the Supreme Court who's willing to step up and can identify with folks on a personal level who have gone through these similar situations.
Can we have a clone of her as our Attorney General here in Florida? I don't think I'd mind that at all.
Well, she is a product of Florida. She graduated from public high school in Miami and then went off to go to Harvard. So I think that our public school system here in Florida, Chaka went up for that, and Chaka went up for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Hopefully we can get this through before the midterm elections and have a Supreme Court justice who really understands what we're fighting for and what our families are going through.
All right. Okay, now let's talk about Polk County. Polk County, the center of the sphincter that is Florida. It's named after James K. Polk, our 11th president, whose main claim to fame was taking a big chunk of Mexico and calling it Texas, along with a few other things. And 10 years later, after he dies of dysentery, Polk County gets incorporated and named. And it's had a very interesting history, along with being one of the citrus capitals. It also has a place where they are constantly doing sting operations. Now, right now, we have Grady Judd, the sheriff there, who both Chris and myself have gone head-to-head with at one point in time or another. And he just loves doing the sting operations. He gets on the TV, he says, "We caught all these people." Question is, did he catch them all rightfully? Did he catch them all reasonably? Because there was a sting operation back in 1987 that caught our guest today, Mr. Richard DeLisi, who was given essentially three life sentences for a nonviolent crime, and was able to serve only 32 of those 90 years, because it's kind of hard to serve 90 years. And we're more than happy. We are thrilled to have Richard here today to talk about his journey and what we can do in the future. Richard, welcome to the rotation.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, explain what the sting operation involved back in 1987.
In 1987, one of my friends came to me that he owed me a substantial amount of money, and he was working with the FDLE because he had got caught smuggling cocaine or something on one of his airplanes, and he was looking to advance. Matter of fact, when I got arrested, he had already turned in, I think, 87 people, and he was a multimillionaire doing it. They were all paying him cash money, $50 bills. His name was Jim White. And him and his wife were confidential informants, I guess, for the government and every other organization that you can even think of. And they were paying him cash. And he's the one that actually brought, entrapped me into the deal that I got in trouble for.
Yeah, the Last Prisoner Project, who did an interesting article, which needs to be updated because it still says you're in prison, by the way. We'll get to the Last Prisoner Project on that one. Said it was a reverse sting operation. What do they mean by that?
In other words, the state, in other words, the FDLE agents wound up working with this ex-inmate that happened to go to prison, and they took him out to work for them. And he would go around setting people up and telling the government, when he set the people up, he'd make sure that he got money from whoever he was setting up first, and he would keep it, and he would tell the government that he got a couple of thousand when he got like 30 or 40 or 50 or like that. And he kept doing it like that, and he kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And I think when we had him checked out, he was like, I don't know, way up in the millions. He had bank accounts all over the country and all over the world, in the Grand Caymans and offshore corporations, all kinds of stuff. Him and his wife were quite manipulating the government quite well, and they got away with it, and they're still getting away with it probably today if they're still alive.
Interesting. And both you and your brother got swept up in this sting, correct?
Actually, yep. And my brother.
What were the three main charges?
Conspiracy to trafficking, and racketeering.
Now, it's my understanding that the charges that were they brought you up on, normally carry around 12 to 17 years.
Right. And when they did my PSI, they actually told the judge and the prosecutor they should give me like 12 years. And I wound up, the prosecutor wound up asking the judge, to run everything wild, and because I did something like this before. This has been the passion all my life to do this. You know what I mean? And it's going to be the passion till I die to keep on doing it, because I know it's a good thing. And the way they're doing things is just, I know you guys are bobbled just trying to do what you're trying to do to make everything get legalized, but they're just not going about it, the way they should be. I don't think so, and I'm not a rocket scientist,
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because it is frustrating, and I'm sure, like, you, like, to talk to a gentleman such as yourself makes me feel like, why am I complaining? You know what I mean? Because I am fighting every day, and I am frustrated every day, and I'm grumpy every day, and I just see so much bullshit and so much crap that comes from this stupid fucking law that is just, it's done nothing but hurt people, right? And then I talked to a gentleman such as yourself, who's really been the victim of such things, you know, and really seen the brunt of the whole war on drug type situation. You know, I've spent an overnighter. It's all I've done.
Oh,
You
it's
know,
no fun. Not even overnight. Well, you know, it's no fun even overnight.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, and you know, and Canos felt the brunt of it as well. You know, Canos had to do like drug divergent programs and things like that, you know. But a gentleman such as yourself that's really felt the brunt of it, really, like, you know, the whole thing with Normal started that this is a victimless crime, you know, that people just shouldn't be going to jail for this type of thing. Now, people like such as yourself, like there's, you know, I'm reminded, you know, and I hate to bring up another person that was in like a similar situation, but like I'm reminded of the whole blow thing in George Young, where he goes in and he gets a fucking a bachelor's in marijuana, leaves with a graduate degree in cocaine. You know what I mean? Like they're literally manufacturing criminals. And kudos to you for somebody that's, you know, felt this system trying to do it to you, and you still come out on top. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 1980s was a time when they were really starting to play hot and heavy with the RICO laws. All of a sudden, everything turned, you know, with the old idea that if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. At that point in time, they wanted to put through as many racketeering charges as possible, especially when it came to cannabis is concerned.
Well, you know what they did? They you know what they made the law for originally? They made the law originally for these mobster guys, you know, for gangster type people, like for people that ran gangs, you know, like organized gangs. That's what they made these rules for. They didn't make them for like people like us that have families that are doing a righteous thing, that we're trying to do a righteous thing for. Even trying to do a righteous thing for our government, because once cannabis gets completely legalized, then people will see how good it is for the body, and they won't have to worry about all these. I mean, I just started using CBD oil on my neuropathy. I mean,
How's it working for you?
unbelievable. All I can say is I was amazed by it. Luckily, I have people around me like my son and my nephew that can at least teach me this stuff about, you know, because I was getting all my relief from either smoking or taking a gummy. I never even thought about putting stuff on my feet, you know, that would give me some kind of relief. And it actually is unbelievably great.
I understand that your health started to deteriorate in the last few years when you were in prison, and that brings up another topic that we sometimes talk about, but not enough, and that is that we have people who are getting older in prison who require far more medical treatment than they're currently getting. Sometimes we end up spending as much as $25,000-$30,000 a year for each of these prisoners. But it's my understanding that during the course of your incarceration, it was you got approximately $1.8 million was the cost of your care. Is that correct?
For me, it was probably quite a bit more. I had a back operation. I had a couple other operations. They had me medicated, you know, not with, I'm not talking about with like drugs to bring me down or anything. They had me medicated with blood pressure medicine, and it was all from the diets and the diabetes when I came out, I was so malnutrition, my skin was falling off my body. That's how bad it was. And it's only now getting back to where it's supposed to be, you know? I mean, when I came out, I was like 221. Now I'm 180. So, you know, this should be my weight, 180. But in there, you know, you're eating honey buns for lunch and Roman noodle soups for dinner. You know what I mean? It's the food where I was the guys in the kitchen would tear off the edge of the box, and it was out of date by 2 years already, and they were feeding it to us.
Wow.
And
Now,
that's
you were in
the way
South
they do
Bay.
it. in the Department of I say corruption.
What's the grossest thing they ever fed you? Just out of curiosity, what just like really stood out?
Say that one more time.
What was the grossest thing they ever fed you? What like really stood out as something like really fucking gross?
Probably everyday lunch
It
and
was all
everyday
crap,
dinner.
huh?
I'm not kidding you. I mean,
Yeah.
I actually lived on stuff that I actually cooked in my cell. You know, I had a stinger set up. I had a bucket with water in it, and I would actually cook my stuff in my cell. Sometimes I would make, you know, things that would take hours to cook.
Wow.
But I always had decent roommates, and everybody kind of looked out for me because they knew I wasn't about trouble, that I was in there to help everybody, you know, get along. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And that was like one of my main things in there. That's why I got along with all these gang members and stuff like that inside, because they knew that I was trying to help all of them. You know what I mean? It wasn't that I just picked out people that were involved in marijuana and stuff and
Uh-huh.
drugs. I mean, any kind of charges, I used to try to help, you know, especially youngsters, you know what I mean? When I seen them
Richie.
going the wrong way in prison. And I mean, where I was, I happened to be in a certain prison that was pretty nice, you know, as far as living quarters and, you know, air conditioning. Because in Florida, matter of fact, 98% of the prisons don't have air conditioning.
Now,
And
you were in
know,
South Bay Correctional, correct?
huh?
You were in South Bay.
South Bay is where I went home from. Yes,
Yeah.
I spent 17 years there.
You said no holds barred, man. So like, I gotta ask you this question, right? One thing I don't know if you're aware of what I do for a living, but I own a CBD store. I sell things like hemp flower, and one part of my job, one aspect of my job that's actually pretty big is, you know, people that are on probation coming in here looking for CBD flower because they're used to self-medicating with marijuana, and now all of a sudden they're drug tested, right? I'm aware of the fact that drugs get into jail, and I'm aware of the fact that marijuana gets into jail, right? Are there a lot of prisoners that are able to, and you know, the government doesn't really realize that once, even if you're a criminal, right, this is still a medicine for you, right?
No doubt
And
about it.
yeah, so being a prisoner, you know, is there a lot of marijuana that can be like smuggled in there? Do prisoners get a lot of marijuana in? Like, are there like
It's just like the street in there.
it is?
It's its own little city inside of a
I'm
fence.
sure there's like a lot of hard drugs, but I would imagine consuming marijuana in a locked up situation, like it
Let
was
me tell
hard
you
when I was in
something.
college in my dorm room. You know what I mean?
Marijuana that I used to smoke in prison was
Uh-huh.
as good as the marijuana that I'm smoking right now out here.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah,
Nice.
Wow.
all Kush products. You know what I mean?
Do you see like any prisoners in jail, like is there like do you get dry, like do you like do some prisoners like maybe like substitute with spice, like is there any like with the prohibition that's in prison, like do you see any prisoners going to other
There's
drugs? It's
plenty
like
of them
essentially what
that
I'm asking.
love the crazy artificial stuff. I can
Yeah.
remember one day I was sitting in the dormitory at my table, right,
Mm.
at South Bay, and a guy was on the phone, right, and I know he was you know, he was smoking that I guess spice, or you know, that artificial marijuana, that stuff that comes from the Orient,
Yeah.
and he hung up the phone. He went upstairs. He got up on the third rail and jumped off
Jesus.
head first, hands at side, and broke his neck and his back. He was dead
Holy
when he hit
shit.
the ground.
Wow.
Yep. I seen stuff like that a lot in there. I seen guys OD. I mean, you know, in the kitchen, you know, especially
Yeah.
in the state,
You
the state joints, you know, the Florida prison system. I mean, you know, they're uh, the inmates are smuggling stuff crazy in there, you know.
Yeah,
Now-
you would imagine because of the odor, like smoking marijuana is like a difficult thing to do. Like, how would you like? Would there be any way to like remedy that?
No,
Would you
what I
like?
would do,
It's not like you can crack a window. You know what I mean?
yeah, we didn't have any windows in where I live,
Yeah.
where I was in South Bay. So if I wanted to smoke, they had an exhaust vent over the bathroom area,
Mm.
and it would suck out, and the air conditioner was blowing on the other side. So I would go up to the vent, and that's how I'd smoke. Go
No
right
shit.
in, and it would go right out the roof or wherever it would go. I don't know.
So, Richard, I'm always fascinated with the cost to patients and consumers. What's the going rate on the eighth? On the inside, is it comparable to what folks are paying in the streets?
No, for an eighth, you probably $350.
$350.
Yeah, for an eighth.
Wow.
What?
You know,
Wow.
What the
of
fuck?
the right type of stuff. You know, like a kush item.
Shit, that's like buying weed in Cuba.
Yep.
Could you get like shittier weed for less money? Like, could you get like some like maybe some True Leaf bud for?
We're never gonna get sponsored by Julie.
Now, True Leaf is not a sponsor. We should make note of that.
They're never gonna be after that joke.
I'm sorry.
Let me tell you something. I smoke some True Leaf stuff that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Good stuff. We joke, but we've also seen the ups and downs with the recalls, mold, pesticides issues and such. So that's why we cracked the joke there. But I think that wow, just to hear that, just to know that there's that, and you've spent 3 decades. You've seen the commercialization of the prison industrial complex too. I mean, one of the issues I even though I only spent a day for cannabis possession, knowing that I went in there with a certain amount of money and I went out with less money, all because of JPay processing it, and they put it on a debit card for me, and just understanding that they do every single thing to hit people up, on a commercial aspect. And maybe if you could talk about some of the things you might have seen over the years. I mean, are they, how they charge people for phone calls, or how they're bopping you at the commissary, on the legal side, not even on the illicit market of things.
Well, in 32 years, I ran up a $50,000 phone bill with my son. Did that tell you anything?
Wow. Yeah, that is exploitation to the fullest.
I don't want to tell you how many other people I ran up phone bills, like my mother, my father before they passed away, my brothers, sisters, cousins, nephews, everybody.
How do they
And
collect?
I mean, the deal, they send you money, they got to process it, they got to charge you for this. They come up with all these charges. I remember when I first came to prison, the food was excellent. And, you could get your own packages, you get everything. But, the inmates in this state, and they run it everywhere. They just can't leave well enough alone. They got to, try to do their little smuggling deal or whatever it is they're trying to do. And they just ruin it for everybody else, to make, a few bucks. You know what I'm saying? They completely wipe it out.
Man.
I'm not just who's the whole the next question here. We actually at the beginning of this pandemic, we had a webinar in regards to cannabis prisoners all over the world. And
to go back on what you said before, about the medical care.
Yeah.
Well, I went up to medical. I had COVID, right? And I went up to medical and I said, "Hey, listen, I lost my taste and I can't smell and my stomach's bothering me." They gave me 2 Tylenol. They sent me back to the dormitory.
Jeez.
I moaned and groaned for 13 days. My roommate, if I didn't have a good Christian brother for a roommate, if I would have had someone that was stupid, they would have probably choked me to death in my sleep. But this guy took care of me. And then a week later, he got it. After I was better, a week later, he got it.
Wow.
It's my understanding that over at South Bay, they had 64 staff members that were COVID positive. Those are people who get in contact with those folks who are in an extremely densely populated area.
That's
And
how
that
they
is
were
why
doing it. They were
Southgate-
bringing it in from the street, the officers, because they weren't checking them right. You know, they weren't giving them the, you know, if the thermometer didn't work, they just let them go in, you know. Or, you know, if they, you know, they did a swab or whatever and it didn't work out, they, you know, they were still working. It didn't matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Craziness.
It seemed for a while there that like if you got arrested and you were a certain age, it was basically a death sentence. Like,
Oh yeah, for
like,
sure.
there was.
You know, I knew if I didn't work on, you know, you gotta remember something. I spent 32 years, and there wasn't 1 minute while I was in prison that I didn't have some kind of motion in the courts.
Mhm.
You know, with all the jobs that I had throughout the years and all the successful deals that I did in prison and helped people, I always made time for the law library and making sure whatever I could file, and I wouldn't lose it. You know, and every time I filed, it was like somebody in the courts or somebody in the government was telling the courts, you can't do that. You can't do nothing for this guy. You know, because what they were thinking was, you know, even when they thought me and my brother were gangsters. I said, we are the farthest thing from gangsters. You know, it's crazy. But you know what they figure? Oh, they're from Brooklyn, they're Italian, you know what I mean? They're gangsters. That's what they figure out. That's their mentality, you know?
So Richard, you said no holds bar, and we talked a lot about you like your experience within prison. I want to hear about like how you ended up there. How much marijuana did you have? Right? What were you doing? How did you get caught?
Okay,
Right? What happened?
here's the best thing ever. I've never even did the marijuana that was in the courtroom. That was the first time I ever seen it.
Really? You
When
were
all
never
that
actually in the possession of that marijuana?
No, I never even seen it. I was
Really?
200 miles away from it when they found it,
Mm-hmm.
because they had made up a phony baloney deal. They made like they were putting it on an airplane in Jamaica and they were flying it into Tampa, and they were all this phony baloney stuff they were doing, which was the conspiracy. They were conspiring, you know, to figure out a way to get me the longest and the worst time ever. They wanted to make an example out of me because of, like I said, the Italian last name from New York, you know what I mean, from Brooklyn and all that stuff, you know what I mean, and they did it. They were able to do it.
Now, but you weren't even touching the plant, right?
Excuse me? No, I never even seen it.
Wow.
You know,
So, at what level was your culpability then?
here's what they were saying. They were saying that I had smuggled weed from Jamaica on this airplane that never even left. What they did was they drove the weed from Polk County Sheriff's Department to Tampa to Vernon Verde Airport. I think it's Vandenberg, and they loaded it on this friend of mine's airplane that I thought was my friend that was setting me up. You know, he was working for them, and he flew it from there to Polk County, and then at Polk County, some people picked it up, and when they were pulling out of the airport, they got arrested. And a few days after that, they arrested me 200 miles south of where in other words, they arrested me in Broward County, but they put me in a car and took me to Polk because they knew it would never stick in Broward.
That's crazy. So a friend basically gave you up. Like you went down because somebody else didn't want to go down.
Exactly. He went down and they took him out to get everybody else, you know, to get as many people as he could actually figure out how he could get them, you know.
Wow.
Well, that was something I was going to say is, you know, like, Richard, you did 32 years. You didn't snitch. You didn't roll over on anybody. But that's because you were snitched on. There was a snitch setting you up. That's
Wow.
just mind-boggling.
Well, don't get me wrong. I could have been a snitch.
Yeah.
You know, I could have ratted out the people, you know, the people that were involved with me. But for what? I knew you know, here I am. I believe in what I do. So why would I try to put someone else behind bars because of, you know, a friend of mine that was involved with me, right? He called, I call him up and they wanted to offer me a deal. They said, we'll give you 5 years if you give us the guy who gave you the money to do the deal, right? So I said, let me think about that, you know? So I called my friend up, you know, that gave me the money. And I said to him, I say, hey, Johnny, what's going on? He says, oh, man, I found out that my wife's pregnant with twins.
Oh,
I
shit.
said, okay, nice. Listen, I'll talk to you soon. And I hung up the phone.
Wow.
You know, 32 years later, I told him the story. He said, I can't believe they offered you, you know, a couple of years, and I would have got a couple of years, and we wouldn't have had all this trauma in the family that went on, you know? I mean, you got to understand, when you're pulled out of a family, you got, you know, your little siblings that you're taking care of. You got your wife, you got your children, you know, you got the house, you got the business. When you're taken away from that, it just destroys the whole world of what was going on for something that God put on the planet for us to enjoy.
Now, I met Donnie Clark, who's over in Manatee County. He also served. He was also on a life sentence. He was commuted by Clinton, but he had told me that, you know, his whole family was involved in the business, and that they asked him to go ahead and roll over on his family, and he said, "I'm not going to do that. I'm going to declare myself not guilty." He was the only person in his entire family to do that. And he ended up serving all that time. Everybody else got off in a matter of 3 or 4 years, but he was not going to do that. And so he took the brunt of that, and served a very, very long time. Now,
And you know what my friend had told me? My friend said to me, if you would have told me that, you would have did 2 years and I would have did 2 years and we would have been home. And we would have, you know, kept on doing whatever we were doing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And he's my friend today. He's a professor. He listened to me when I was in business before, you know, all this trouble started happening. I said to him, Johnny, this really ain't your thing, man. You're a real smart man. Go get an education. He went back to college and he wound up being a professor. And he's been a professor in universities all over the country, and mostly up north in New York area and Massachusetts area. But he's still a wonderful friend of mine. As a matter of fact, he's coming to Florida today. He's going to stay with me for a couple of weeks.
Oh, fantastic! Now, you had mentioned that you were always digging into the law library. I take it you started in motion the idea to find a way to get yourself out of prison from close to the very beginning that you were incarcerated, and continuing on throughout the entire 31 years. I know that you mentioned you had only a few clemency hearings during that time, and each case they were refused. Nikki Fried has told us there are a lot of clemency hearings that just don't happen.
Yeah.
So, did you see a lot of people who were waiting and waiting and waiting for clemency that never came?
Say that one more time.
Did you meet a lot of folks in prison who had been waiting for a long, long time for any kind of clemency hearing that never happened in Florida?
Oh, for sure. Everywhere.
Rick Scott, you know, doesn't seem like he did much for clemency when he was governor.
No, Rick was like, you know, he was just doing the politics thing to go up the ladder. You know, that's what they all do. You know, our governor that we have now, maybe he'll wind up budging because there's so much money involved, you know, and people start to twist your arm a little bit. Hey, you know, I want, you know, the friend thing comes into effect. You know what I mean? The politic friend thing, and that's the way things actually get moving along in the country. And it's with this particular thing, it should be for people like us, you know, people that are trying to fight for this thing to be legal, people that spent their life doing this, their whole life doing it, you know? I mean, I've been doing this since I was 13 years old.
Besides the NRA, GEO is one of the largest lobbying groups in Tallahassee, and of course they represent all the for-profit prisons. It's amazing how much profit there is in incarcerating people, which is absolutely insane. That this should be a for-profit industry.
The best part is they figure out how to keep you there as long as possible to get as much money as they can, you know?
Yeah.
And GEO has enough money to buy both parties. I mean, GEO is not just a Republican donor. They're donating money to the Democrats in Florida to their reelection. I mean, we've seen Senator Darrell Roussan taking their money. We've seen Lauren Book taking their money. People who you think are good progressive Democrats are taking money from the private prisons.
And it's going to continue.
Well, Richard, what led to your finally getting released?
What was it like the final day?
Well, what led to your final release? What actions were taken by whom?
Yeah, what did it take to get you out, Richard?
Oh, what happened was my nephew and my son, they started this the freedelisi.com was the first thing that we started, and we started getting a lot of followers, and they kept at it, they kept at it and at it and at it. And then it took probably 15 or 16 years, and the Last Prison Project thing popped up. And I remember when I was in prison that someone came over to me and they said, "Hey, man, you know anything about this Last Prisoners Project, this Steve D'Angelo guy?" And I said, "No, I don't know nothing about it, bro." He said, "Well, maybe you should look into it." And at that time, they were already looking into my deal because they were in touch with my son and my nephew. And a guy did a little report on me in Polk County in the newspaper, a guy that was a cannabis guy. And he thought it was kind of bad that they were doing what they were doing to me. And he wound up writing a little article, and then Fox News picked up on it in Tampa. And once Fox News picked up on it in Tampa, they couldn't hold the lid on it no longer. I mean, it blew wide open. Every newspaper in the country had me in their newspaper. Even in Europe, I was in the newspaper.
Wow.
About the countries that haven't realized that. Look at this man. They're finally going to let this guy out. But this was just before they decided what they were going to do with me, because I was sitting in my cell when it all happened. And I was sitting there, I was talking to my roommate, and my roommate said, "Hey, man, they want you in the officer station, Class A." And I said, "Man, I ain't even use the bathroom, man. I ain't going to go out there right now." He said, No, they're anxious to get you. So I paid no attention to it, and they finally wound up coming and get me and told me, "Hey, you got to go down to classification." And I went down to classification. When I go into classification, they tell me, "Listen, classification, Tallahassee is going to call and they want to talk to you about something." I said, "What?" The head of classification in Tallahassee don't even talk to my folks when they try to call him. And he's going to call me in prison. It's unheard of. So I said, "What is it about?" They said, "Oh, there's some kind of mistake they made on your game time." Now, this is all going on while the Last Prisoners Project is stirring the bowl of soup. In other words, it's starting to overboil, you know what I mean? So they're trying to figure a way to get me out before it really goes, crazy. So, I was just like, I'm sitting there and I don't know what to think, but my classification officer blinked at me. So I knew it was okay. But when I walked in the office, the head DOC person was there, the monitor for the prison, for the South Bay prison, and the head of classification from South Bay was in there. And I said, "What's going on?" They said, "Oh, they just want to talk to you about something. They made a mistake in your game time." What they were doing was they were actually going to bullshit me. Because what happened is they finally call me and they're telling me, oh, we made a mistake in your gain time. We're going to let you go like in about 3 months because, we made this big mistake that we didn't give you this time. And when you're an inmate, the minute you're getting out. There is no, what gain time, when are you going to get it, what you got it for. I mean, if you did something good in the prison, you went to a class and they gave you a couple of days, you get it, right? So you click off all this stuff because it comes off your gain time sheet every month. So I knew exactly when I was going home. So he tells me, yeah, we're going to let you go in 3 months. I'm like, so I said to him, I had 4 disciplinary reports in 32 years. Excuse me. Once for kissing my girl in a visiting park twice. Once for leaving my job because I had the flu. Stupid stuff. And I had said it to the head of classification while I was on the phone with him in Tallahassee. I said, hey, listen, I got like 4 DRs for the stupid. And he goes, yeah, I can't believe I'm talking to the head of classification up there. He says, I can't believe them assholes wrote you DRs for that stupid shit. I said, yeah, you know what I'm trying to do? I'd like to get maybe, maybe a little bit of the gain time back, like a couple of weeks, a month. He said, you know what, Mr. DeLisi, I'm going to give you all that gain time. You're going to go home the 8th of December. Now, when I left my cell, I was still going to be in prison for a long, long time. Now this guy's telling me this, right? So I walk out of there like I'm almost in a stupor. I go back in my quad and I walk into the cell. He goes, my roommate's waiting there. He goes, what's going on, Richie? They called me Uncle Richie in there. He goes, Uncle Richie, what's happening? I said, man, they tell me I'm going home the 8th. He said, man, don't even play around like that, bro. I said, hey, bro, I'm telling you, they told me I'm going home the 8th. Because, they found some gain time. And he goes to me, they found some gain time. We've been doing the gain time for like, 2 years now. There was no gain time that wasn't there. So, I said, yeah, they bullshitted me. They bullshitted the whole state. And here I am.
Now, for those uninitiated, gain time is the time that you accumulate during the time of your incarceration that it is taken off of your sentence at the end, usually to good behavior or helping out other prisoners, correct? What did you do for gain time?
What I did for gain time, I worked in the chapel. I did programs. I worked in horticulture. I worked in small engines. I went through all these classes, and when I was done with the classes, that the supervisor of the classes would always ask me, hey, Uncle Richie, you want to stay here and work? Be an aide for us? And I'd say, hey, okay, listen, I'll stick around for 6 or 7 months, but I'm going to move on. And I would stay and I would teach people how to make cabinets. I was in the cabinet making that when I stayed in for a couple of years. But I got tired of it too. It's, I was too busy, trying to get myself out of prison and trying to stay focused on what I needed to do, to be just, so when I got into chapel, I was happy, because I could, help and do programs. And then when I had my little leisure time, I could go into the chapel library and do what I had to do with the legal work and stuff,
What's the first thing you wanted to do when you got out?
The first thing I wanted to do when I got out was take a swim and see the first thing I actually wanted to do was grab a hold of my grandchildren and my family, my son and my, everybody that I had grandchildren that I never even met, Yeah. I mean, I talked to them on the telephone, or I talked to them on the little tablets that they had, but they were charging. That's one of them right there. That's my little baby there. That's Aya. That's Richie's little girl. She's the greatest.
Beautiful.
I love her to death.
Yeah, she's cute as heck.
Richard, being in 32 years, I mean, the world consumer technology, everything has changed. I mean, when you went into the 80s and now everybody has these devices that connect us. I mean, just tell us a little bit about the culture shock coming home.
Let's take a look at it.
It was quite a culture shock, for real. When I got out, my son handed me a telephone. It was an iPhone 10. He just gave me a new one the other day for my birthday. He gave me a 12 Pro or something. I don't even know how to use, a flip phone. And he hands me this thing and he says, "Oh yeah, Dad, all you got to do is push this and do that, and you get directions to where you want to go." I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Get the fuck out of here. What are you kidding me, right?" I had no idea, right? When I started playing with it, every day I learned something new on the phone. And you got to remember, I've been home over a year now.
Yeah.
It's just like my passion now is I'm home, but there's over 40,000 of us that are still there. All right, that ain't coming home until we do something about these laws. And we got to do something. We got to stay on top of these people. This is very, very important. I mean, getting it legalized is one thing, but we got to get these laws changed to get these men and women out. They got families, you know what I mean? I was out for Christmas. They're not. I was out for Thanksgiving. They're not. I'm out for all these great things with my family and just growing up and seeing them grow, And we need help with that, man. That's very important. And the Last Prisoners Project and Freedom Grow and all these people that are trying to help with getting these people out of prison, boy, it's very, very, very important not to forget who's still there.
Yeah, we have people who are still in from the 80s, from the 90s, from the aughts, so to speak. And I take it you saw your fair share of people who are on low level drug offenses in prison who should never have been there in the first place.
Exactly. And they're still doing it. They just they got a kid the other day in I think it was Louisiana. They gave him like life with 30 for a marijuana nonviolent charge. What?
So it's still
legal in the
going
next
on.
state. It's legal next to that state. What?
Yeah, it's legal medically in that state too. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that nuts?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Richard, one thing
a young man that they just pulled out of his family. They took him out of his family, this whole surrounding, and throws him in prison. And the bad part is, guys like me that are in prison for nonviolent. I got a guy next to me, a rapist that raped kids, and I got a guy above me that shoots people and kills people. You know what I mean? And they're mixing them up with people like us, that are nonviolent, and we're all about peace. You know what I mean? I'm about peace and love, bro. That's my whole thing.
Was South Bay a medium security?
I'm sorry?
Was South Bay a medium security facility?
No, it's closed custody. That's a maximum security prison.
Wow. Gotcha. Richard, I was reading some of the
never in a minimum security prison all the time I was down, and I had a minimum security. When I got to minimum, they still didn't do anything. When I got to community, they still didn't do anything. They kept me in a maximum security prison instead of sending me to work release or something where I could at least see my family, once a week, where I could hug them and kiss them and, and eat a little food, real food with them. But they're heartless when it comes to stuff like that. Really, they are.
And, we know that there's always a lot of corruption in Florida on several levels of the legislature, but also even within in the DOC there and our legal system. There's all sorts of corruption. I mean, we had a huge case that went on for years about a very, very rich person in West Palm who was trafficking young girls, 14-year-old girls, bringing them to the house. And when he got put in prison, he was given ability to go to back and forth to home and do his work and only stay in prison during the weekends. And yet, folks like yourself were in there 24/7 for 32 years. It just doesn't make sense.
The guy lived like a couple of miles from my house.
Wow, that's heavy.
And
Richard,
the guy was. I hear from other people that were around him, he was completely out of control, and all the politicians were completely out of control with him. You know, with all the sex stuff and all that shit going on in the island. Oh my God, it was out of control. And our president and our president's wife was in on that deal.
I had a chance to talk to Mark Inch, who's currently head of the Department of Corrections, and asked him basically, are we looking at our prisons right now as a place of incarceration or a place of reformation? And he said it is both, and it is as it is. I don't understand exactly what that means, but it seems to me that people do not seem to get better if they are involved if they start out with a history of violence. You didn't even have a history of violence when you went into prison.
The thing is in the system, what they have to do is they took out all the education. Luckily, South Bay has it because they're getting money from the government to do it. But the state, they don't have anything to help people anymore. You know, I mean, a youngster could go into prison, say when I went in, like a guy 20 years old, and he could stay for 4 or 5 years and learn a complete trade where he could come out and never go back to prison. Well, they don't have that anymore. All they have is hangout spots. You know what I mean? No educational programs. You know, it's completely insane, especially in this state. You know, the Department of Corrections in Florida is just they're not spending any money on their inmates. They just want to house them and collect. They don't want to feed them or clothe them in the proper way. I mean, giving used clothes to inmates. You know, you wait 6 months and get a pair of underwear with stains in them. Come on, give me a break.
Wow.
And they won't let your people send you anything. That's the thing, you know. You know, folks could send something in.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Your son and your nephew, Ken, you should just stop by and just poke your head in and say hi.
Well, we got Kenny. Kenny's going to come in right here right now.
There we go.
How you guys doing?
Okay.
Good to see
Yeah.
you.
hey, great.
Kudos to you for what you were doing outside when your uncle was inside.
Yeah, you know, that's him. You know, and Ricky. Shout out to Rick DeLisi. He's there in Amsterdam right now.
Definite. You know, Rich, I love you too much. I mean, it's crazy how much I love you guys.
Yeah, man.
I wish you were right over here on the other side of Kenneth with me right now.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right, fellas. I'll talk to you guys soon. All right.
Well, Richard, before you go, just let them know. Let our listeners, let our viewers know how they can get in touch with you, like how they can support you.
Okay.
Yeah, you got your own brand, right? Delicioso?
Yeah, free Delicioso.
Tell us about it.
The Delicioso is, you know, I'm like I told you, I'm an activist. I'm getting ready to. I'm gonna try to launch Delicioso probably the 20th of April, and after that you'll be hearing from me again.
Okay, that sounds good.
And of course, if you want to donate to the Last Prisoner Project, I know that some of our MMTCs,
Absolutely.
including
I want to donate to them, and I want to donate to Freedom Grow because they're all working hard to get guys like me. I mean, they're collecting money just so guys like me, when they're in there and they have family that don't have money to send them, that they send them little commissary and stuff for the stamps and you know, phone time and phone cards and all that stuff. And I'm definitely going to back that up 100%. You know, once I start moving along in the industry, I'll make sure that everybody has sweetie goals.
I like your logo, Ken.
Love it.
It's
Great
classy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Richard.
We
All
appreciate
right.
you. Thanks for joining us in the rotation this week.
And we'll talk to you soon. You hear me?
We'll see you again
God
soon.
bless. Peace.
Well, look, y'all have heard it. That was America's longest serving cannabis prisoner, Rich DeLisi, who was sentenced to 98 years by a Polk County judge, served 32. And, funny thing is he got sent away in 89. Had it been after 1995, the Florida Truth in Sentencing Act would have required him to have served at least 76 years before any type of release. So understanding, as he said, that he has comrades and people who we've met who will never be getting out. And our prison industrial complex is wasting, millions of our tax dollars to have nonviolent drug offenders in prison. And meanwhile, there, as we've touched on, there are child molesters and rapists and murderers running around on the streets. And yet, for some reason, our government thinks it's right and it's proper to throw the book at people and break up families and such for nonviolent drug offenses. And that is something that we are dedicated to continuing to reform these laws and change, which is why we think it's so important that you donate to Suncoast Normal, that you become a member, that you understand that all of the proceeds that we get go back into this organization to achieve the mission. And so go to suncoastnormal.org, become a member. Member benefits come with a lot of great things other than just getting a lapel pin and a membership card and a discount at Chillum. We have various events that are coming up. The Tampa Bay Cannabis Business Expo, where if you're a member, you can get a discount on getting you a vendor table. This is going to be Saturday, April 23rd. It's going to be the largest expo. Go to suncoastnormal.org if you want more information about it. You can tickets to general admission to the expo are actually free. But we do have some amazing panels that we're putting together that you will want to pay to be a part of, to hear from these amazing panelists. If you're an MMTC, if you're a doctor's clinic, if you're in the cannabis industry, we'll have the opportunity for you to be a sponsor, for you to actually set up on-site interviews and, really make a job fair out of this as well and showcase all the different ways that folks can get into the cannabis industry. As I said earlier today, we're getting close to 500,000 jobs in the legal cannabis industry in this country, which has been declared an essential business. During the pandemic, dispensaries did not close down. During the pandemic, Chillum did not close down, right, Carlos? Exactly.
Yeah.
So-
Isn't it amazing that somebody can go to prison for something which is considered an essential service right now, where they did not close it down?
Mind-boggling. That is mind-boggling.
And
One thing I did get to ask Richard is the quality of that Colombian weed that he was smuggling is probably not as good as the modern day Kush that we're smoking, right?
he was saying that he was getting some good weed in jail, though. That was
But for $3.50 an eighth, that hurt my heart.
See, that is almost like True Leaves prices, isn't it?
It's disheartening too, because to talk to him and all the shit and now we're Gary had me put this graphic together of all the bills that didn't go through.
we have to hit this before we leave.
Yeah.
I'll do it fast. Okay.
I made the graphic,
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here to say goodbye to some absolutely fantastic bills that didn't make it through session. So let's
take the chat.
let's give the names of the fallen and let's know what never got their first committee, and therefore, even though we're halfway through the session, we know they aren't going to go anywhere. We have Senate Bill 162, physician certifications of medical use of cannabis, that has to do with lengthening the amount of time.
Like a trumpet thing, like a.
Yeah, or you could play Funeral for a Friend from Elton John. Can you do that? You don't have that available.
We don't have the rights to that music.
All right. Well, SB 162, which was for certifications for doctors to be able to extend the amount of time you have to go before in between patients, dead. Next, SB 164, also certifications for medical cannabis that would have done amazing things, including give initial exams in the doctor's office, but everything else with telehealth, dead. Physician certifications for medical use also would have deleted the requirement that qualified physicians need to be physically present. So that was another one in regards to telehealth, dead. HB 467, legalization of recreational marijuana from Representative Hinson. That was a highly comprehensive 147-page bill for legalization. Dead. SB 470, revising penalties for nonviolent offenses from Senator Powell to reduce the amount of time that people would spend in jail for minor offenses. Dead. HB 495, legalization of recreational cannabis from Representative Humphrey, a 437-page omnibus bill for legalization.
No pages, no more.
All right. HB
Dead, bro.
HB 679 and 1268. Oh, we had so much hopes. If you remember, we had Representative Learned here.
More bills than ever and more deaths than ever, apparently.
We had more bills filed this year than any other year in regards to cannabis bills, and yet so little of it actually got through.
Yeah.
Here, we have Learned and Roach's bill, the first bipartisan bill we put so much faith into, now dead. Because it never got to its first committee. Thank you, Will Robinson. We really appreciate that.
Who's Will Robinson?
Representative from Sarasota who could have put it on his agenda, but did not.
I thought that was like...
That was danger, Will Robinson. All right, now State Bill 740, medical marijuana patient protection. That's our bill filed by Senator Brandis to make certain that if you go into the hospital and you have medicine that's keeping you alive, it's dead. And hopefully...
Fucking dead.
And that's going to have a lot
died
of
in the hospital.
And you can be still taken off of the medical transplant list. Dead. HB 725, collateral consequences and penalties for criminal offenses with Representative Joseph. That would decriminalize all the drugs out there to go ahead and offer more clemency. Dead. SB 744, the medical use of cannabis by out-of-state visitors. That's the reciprocity bill that would allow patients to come from other states who have the medical card to be able to work to get their product over here so they could come on vacation and not leave on probation. Dead.
What is there like? There's like 5 more.
Now, well, HB 693, the Department of Health, done by Rodriguez and Drake, is still alive. And you will possibly see some amendments being attached to that bill. There are already 4 of them so far that might have a chance. That's one avenue we have left. Now let's go on to the ones that didn't make it. HB 766 and 768.
There's still one more.
Criminal justice. Drug Free America Foundation. They asked to have $241,000 to do a study on the adverse effects of cannabis and in pregnancy. Nah, it's
dead during pregnancy.
Well, we actually hope it's going to die, but that may still make it.
And minimum, still might make it, but it's going to die.
Minimum sentencing from Escamani, dead. Now, expansion of qualifying conditions, dead. Retention of MMTC licenses, wait and see. You might just see it on there, but the death toll is humongous. It is what it is. And don't worry, we already have rounded up.
It's an 187 on a marijuana bill.
We have
the humanity.
This is not a case without suspects. We know who the suspects are who killed these bills. Not just the legislature, but also the anti-woke bill, the 15-week abortion bill.
Let's take a minute and pause for that because this really grinds my gears. The state legislature
has running from here.
All these amazing cannabis bills, which will make the system more patient-centric, which will give patients the opportunity to spend less money, will give patients the opportunity to breathe clearly and be able to work, for those who are on the organ transplant list, to be able to breathe clearly, to have a clear head, to know that they're not going to get kicked off for utilizing medical cannabis. These different bills that would allow for expungements, these different bills that would allow for decriminalization, these different bills that would assist the doctors in better serving their patients. And instead, the state legislature has sucked all the air out of the room for 2 bills. One, an abortion ban bill, which, to me, it's like you continue to attack women's health care. We continue to go on this wedge issue, which has been decided by the Supreme Court. And yet, for some reason, they still want to talk about it. They still want to address it. And then beyond that, we have these bills around critical race theory in schools, which no school teaches critical race theory in the K through 12 system. Right, that is something that is taught in advanced law school. And the sad part is that they just want to make sure that students are getting this whitewashed version of history from the McGraw-Hill textbooks. You know, and for those of you who went to school, public school, you know, here in Florida in the 80s and 90s, you know, because there's a white Egyptian dude on the cover, even though Egyptians weren't white. So that's the type of the textbooks that they want to continue to put out and print. And then you have the Don't Say Gay bill.
What's going on?
Jesus wasn't white either.
Jesus wasn't white?
No, he had a Mediterranean olive complexion.
No, here's the clear thing. Clearly, Jesus wasn't white because why would you go to Africa and try and hide a white person? Okay, like that doesn't make any sense. All right, his family fled to Egypt.
I was educated in Florida public schools. Okay, guys.
Yeah, of course, right?
Yeah.
He does look kind of Aryan in some of the things that they put out there. You know, blonde hair, blue eyes. Absolutely, the average Semitic person in Egypt right now looks exactly like that, right?
But there is no House Republican that can sit up there and tell me that they're a champion of cannabis reform when they've sucked all the air out of the room for these two stupid bills around, you know, attacking and preventing kids who are LGBTQ from, you know, getting, you know, education.
Don't Say Gay bill. Don't forget that one.
Yeah, the Don't Say Gay bill, and then making sure that white kids don't feel uncomfortable because their granddaddies and great granddaddies in Putnam County had slaves. You know.
Well,
and of course the voter suppression bill, and last but not least, the joint resolution that was put out by McClure, which is basically there to prevent anybody from being able to put a citizen initiative on the ballot.
Yeah, they want to make it harder for us to make this happen. So I have to say, why are we the people taking this from our public employees, from the people who we have employed to represent us? Why are we accepting this? Why is this considered the status quo? Why aren't we going to rise up this midterm and vote all their sorry asses out of it? I want to ask the people that, because we're going to put together an easy voter guide for you here at Suncoast Normal. We're going to show you which one of these bastards needs to go and which ones are actually allies. But the truth of the matter is that we need you, the people, to actually hold them accountable for it. We need you to vote their sorry asses out.
I mean, that's, yeah.
Now,
I don't have anything to add to that.
Well, I do. Program
you said
note.
it all, man.
Next week, we have a guy on who actually had said to the press he cannot understand why people who attacked the Capitol were getting only a couple of months, and he had to serve almost a year for selling bongs. What kind of?
It's Tommy Chong, and I want everybody to listen to me on the Rotation podcast.
Play it again. I love that. Go ahead, do it again.
This is Tommy Chong, and I want everybody to listen to me on the Rotation podcast.
That's right. This coming Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time for our friends on the West Coast. You can watch Tommy Chong jump here into rotation with Carlos, Gary, and myself. And I am, usually I don't smoke on camera. It's not something I'd like to do publicly. That's all evidence that will be used against me later. But I'm going to fire up the fattest blunt that I can find as we smoke with Tommy here in the rotation.
I guess we should smoke weed too.
I mean, it has to be a solid rotation. That's just all there is to it.
We are.
I'm going to digitally pass you to the left-hand side. Right? The left-hand side.
I mean, we're going to close the shop during the show because, it seems like people are going to want a piece of Tommy.
Well, people have said that they wanted to be there and they wanted to meet Tommy in person because they want to talk about their business. But you know something? We can't do that. But if you want to sponsor our show and have Tommy hear about your product, you can do that.
Yes, we still are accepting sponsors.
You could be one of our sponsors for that show. We have a couple slots left. If you're interested, contact us over here at Suncoast Normal, and you can be one of the sponsors, and we can have your product on there as Tommy's on there, and he will hear about it.
I'm just going to play it again.
Go ahead, one more time.
This is Tommy Chong, and I want everybody to listen to me on the Rotation podcast.
That's right. You can watch live on Facebook. You can watch on Twitter. You can watch it on our Twitch page. You can watch it on YouTube, or you can go to suncoastnormal.org and you can watch it live there as well. Yeah. So there's plenty of platforms to tune in on. If you're missing the Tommy Chong episode, you're just missing it.
I'll fix that watch live thing, I swear.
And we thank Richard DeLisi for coming on today. That was cool.
Is there anything else? Like, we got everything, right?
I think we got everything now.
Okay, well, bye, everybody. See
y'all on Wednesday.
Chong episode, yeah.